After another self-inflicted loss in Game 2 that tied the series, last-minute updates are flying out of KeyBank Center. Lindy Ruff announced a set of necessary change-ups ahead of Game 3, and if history repeats itself, when the Sabres drop a game in the playoffs, a curveball follows. And Buffalo will be looking to rediscover their groove Sunday night in Centre Bell, which can not only tilt momentum in their side for the game, but the entirety of the second round. Hello and welcome, I'm Ryan Lee, and welcome to Sabres Digest. All things Buffalo Sabres will be here on Sabres Digest, your latest news, updates, reactions, and more. So hit subscribe down below to follow along for the journey, and thank you so much for watching. It really does mean a lot to us. So Game 2 was, as we mentioned before, it was very disappointing. There were a lot of things that went wrong. And no matter what the Sabres tried to do, it just seemed like they couldn't get out of their own way. And this is not just a sentiment that was shared throughout the entirety of the Sabres locker room and even the coaching staff, but it's very clearly trickled out throughout everything involving the Buffalo Sabres. And when you really look at what the playoffs are in its entirety, there's a lot of ebbs and flows. It's not a very linear path no matter where you go. There's always going to be ups and downs no matter what. And Bowen Byram probably exemplified this really well in some of the statements he made in an earlier appearance with the Sabres radio crew, especially because this is not just a sentiment that the players feel, it's one that the media and the fans often feel. When you win in Game 1, you just kind of believe it could be a sweep. And when you lose Game 2 at home, it feels like you're going to lose in 5. That's just a natural emotion that comes out of not just the fans, but also the players throughout the entirety of the playoff run. Sentiments that were also reflected from Lindy Ruff when he made his statements throughout the end of practice. And when you really look at the ebbs and flows of what the Sabres have gone through, there's been a lot of highs and a lot of lows, but one of the big highs that the Sabres have really been relying on is the breakout of two of their top young stars on the roster in Zach Benson and Josh Doan, who have been nothing short of the best two and most consistent Sabres throughout the entire series so far. Having a combined 6 points throughout all of round 1 and already having done that in round 2. Individually, mind you, Benson has 3 points. Doan has 3 points throughout the first 2 games of the series. But not just that. Even when you look at some of the analytics numbers, they have easily been some of the more consistent Sabres, both between the Boston series and the first 2 games of Montreal, having a very similar mark of XG between the two, and even in terms of the points per 60 between Benson and Doan. That is the overall productivity that Benson and Doan have had throughout this entire playoffs, and it's really resonated throughout the early 2 games of this series so far, especially with how Zach Benson took things over in Game 1 at points throughout, and even in Game 2, where Benson and Doan were really the only ones having that consistent productivity on the offensive side, either in shots or high danger chances, finding other teammates in the play and getting them all involved. And we saw the heat map last time, and a lot of those high danger opportunities were from those two. And it's not just riding the hot hands and letting them continuously do their thing, but also trying to find a couple of guys who have gone cold and giving them a bit of a confidence, a bit of a boost perhaps, to get them to ramp up a little bit, find that form once again. And when you look at the Buffalo Sabres, both Tuch and Thompson have been really the ringleaders offensively throughout the entire Boston series, each having 7 points apiece in the first round. But when you put them together so far against Montreal, they are straight up an offer. But it's not just necessarily one guy who's really had a drop-off or the other. It's been consistent for both of them so far. Tuch has dropped about a half an expected goal per game, and Thompson a full expected goal per game throughout this entire second round. These are two guys a lot of the Sabres fans have been clamoring for in order to really allow them to gain control of the series versus Montreal because they've been absent. And that's also kind of a credit to the rest of the Sabres squad that they were able to, at the very least, not just win Game 1, but do so very convincingly, and at least had a chance through 2 periods of Game 2, but things just didn't pan out because Tuch and Thompson just didn't have their best game throughout. And if they can reverse those fortunes and get back to the form that they were on, that could put a Sabres team that has been really struggling for offense, especially in those Game 2s, and allow them to find that form again for a high-flying, high-scoring team the same way they have been all year long. And Lindy Ruff openly acknowledged this. Something has to be changed up. You can't have the same thing game in and game out and expect a different result, or else that's the definition of insanity. He said it's time to shake things up, especially on the power play that struggled again, going 0 for again after that electrifying Game 1 performance where they had 2 power play goals. It's time to shake things up. It feels like the right time, and it absolutely can be a factor. This happened every single loss so far in the Sabres playoff run. In Game 2, you had the injury to Josh Norris. Noah Ostlund goes in. After Game 5, Noah Ostlund gets injured. Josh Norris comes in. Now, it's not a matter of injury. It's just a matter of performance. And Lindy Ruff is trying to continuously find the right buttons and levers to pull for the entire roster. It's not just something that he has to do himself. It's something that he has to do in order to put the players in the best position in order to succeed. And he feels like he hasn't really done that yet, at least in this series, especially on the special teams unit that only has those 2 power play goals from Game 1 and also that 1 power play goal throughout the entirety of the Boston series. So, what happened in practice that maybe signified that change is coming soon? Well, this first one comes from Matthew Fairburn. We mentioned how hot Benson and Doan have been throughout this 2-game stretch for Buffalo, and they want to reward that. And Jack Quinn, he's been itching for a goal. He's had looks and eyes for the net, even in the Boston series. He just hasn't hit one yet. So they wanted to change up some looks, get Doan and Benson in tight where they've excelled the most. Doan led the team in power play goals in the regular season, and this allows both guys to shine in a new light. Maybe it's not just in 5-on-5 play, but with this new opportunity on the power play to be with Dahlin and Thompson, that could elevate them two into that same level of productivity that we're accustomed to from Dahlin and Thompson, especially after the dismal performance that Thompson had. It's not just the one line as a whole, but also maybe even spreading things out and opening things up for Dahlin and Thompson, because Benson and Doan, they're going to occupy the front of the net and that doorstep, especially if they most likely run some sort of umbrella type of power play. And that also switches over to power play 2 as well. Zucker and Tuch and Norris all go down to the second unit, which could also have that same little wrinkle. Really 2 guys who are really good in the net front, those deflections, those rebounds that can really hammer a guy like Jakub Dobeš, who had those struggles with net front in Game 1. And then you have a guy like Ryan McLeod and Josh Norris, both of whom are still looking to find that consistency throughout the playoff. And sometimes a changeup is what's needed. It not only can send a message to yourself that, hey, this is something that we have to work on, we got to try to do, but also it's a message that can resonate throughout the entire team. How these changes are being done because things just haven't gone well. And that's not a shame or a knock on the Buffalo Sabres. It's simply a new opportunity to excel and find a way to get the job done. And sometimes you can't just look within the room. Sometimes you have to see what options are away from just the guys that you have on the roster, that primary 18. And with that being said, the latest from Pierre LeBrun of TSN saying that Sam Carrick is going to be available for Game 3. I mentioned it on Carrick before. He's not going to be a guy that's going to be lighting up the score sheet. You're not going to expect him to have big goals game in and game out. But what he does is a lot of the intangibles that helps a lot of the other parts of the game, either to enhance them or to at the very least patch up some of those holes. Faceoffs is a place where Sam Carrick really excels at. Also on the defensive end, a power play that's already excelled and already has done their job in large parts throughout the series. But you also have a high-flying, quick puck-moving power play like Montreal had. They hemmed in the Sabres for over 3 minutes, which extended beyond the kill and even further beyond that. And Sam Carrick could have an opportunity to shine in that aspect too. Winning a key draw, having a key defensive play that can open things up for the Sabres because they're not going to be stuck in one end of the ice this entire time. Game 3 has largely been a game that is pivotal in a 7-game series, especially in a scenario that the Sabres are in right now. Tied, and they don't want to go down 2 in one of the loudest, maybe one of the most raucous places in the entire NHL in Centre Bell. The Sabres have been a team that have really excelled on the road. I mentioned this slide in the last video that we did, but I want to bring it up again because it really does paint a lot of the picture of maybe not only some of the deficiencies that the Sabres have had at home, but also on the road. For whatever reason, the Sabres have just been lights out in the 3 games that they've had in TD Garden, at least in round 1. Plus 10 in the goal differential mark, 3 goals allowed in 3 games. You're scoring over 4 goals a game, and you have a much greater shots on goal differential on the road than at home, where a lot of these games are a lot tighter and maybe a lot more congested in certain areas of the ice. Montreal did a really good job making life difficult for the Sabres. But analytically, Game 2 was actually a lot tighter than maybe perception had. The tape does tell a lot of the tale, but a lot of the XG and a lot of the overall analytics between Montreal and Buffalo show that they were actually a lot tighter than the scoreline perceived. And that type of thing can build confidence because you know opportunities are had, there are chances there. It's just for whatever reason they weren't falling in the back of the net. Change is scary, but it also can be what is absolutely necessary because of how pivotal Game 3 is in a best of 7, especially where they are right now. It's tied. It's turned into a best of 5. And you want to get a head start in the best of 5, the same you probably would in a best of 7. You want to get that head start. You want to get that momentum on your side, especially for the Sabres who have just really been able to feast on the road. They expected a big bounce back from Montreal, and that's exactly what happened. But now, on the other side of the coin, the Habs might need to look out for a Sabres team that are going to bring that same fight that Montreal had in Game 2. And when you really look at the big picture of things and how things can change with that head start in this now best of 5, the Sabres could put themselves in the driver's seat if they do have that Game 3 win on the road on Sunday. It would put them really in command of this entire series, at least based on the odds to make it to the Eastern Conference Final. Carolina just swept. And they're going to have a rest head start on whoever wins this series, the same way that Buffalo had that rest head start because Tampa and Montreal went to 7. You don't want to give the Hurricanes too much of an advantage if this series drags out too long. You want to finish this thing and finish this thing quick. I don't think that is going to happen, but what you at the very least can do is excel and play your best game in the game that's in front of you. The Sabres had an embarrassing performance at home. They want to wash that away. The same way Montreal did in Game 1, and they bounced back in Game 2. Being able to provide your best and bounce back when things don't look like they're going your way is one of the key indicators of how strong a team is, not just physically, but especially mentally. It's the overall mental duration of these playoffs that's going to really test the Sabres in the long run. These guys are still learning how to play a series as things go along. They've only completed one series in this current regime of the Buffalo Sabres. And now they're in their second. They have to take that test again and show that they can show up and prove it once again. We'll have to wait and see on how that goes. But at the very least, the building blocks are there. There's a foundation, and there is some of that experience. Every time that they've lost a game, the Sabres have yet to lose a second. And neither have Montreal. Something that really signifies how great some of these teams have been throughout the playoffs. So if history continues to repeat itself, a commanding Game 1 win at home, followed by a really overall downfall in Game 2, where nothing goes your way. In Game 3, tightly contested, both teams have an edge to them in some way, shape, or form, and if they can get on the better side of Montreal on Sunday, this opens up the whole world of possibilities on what the Sabres could do moving forward. But we got to see what happens at the end of Sunday night. That'll do it for all of us here on Sabres Digest. Thank you so much for watching along. For the latest news, updates, reactions, and more, hit subscribe down below. But also feel free to comment the entire way through. I love seeing everyone discuss with each other, have their insights on how this series and how these games are going to go along. And I want to continuously read them as everything moves along. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a good one. And as always, go Sabres.